everyone, welcome to my channel. If it's your first time joining, welcome. If you are joining from a previous video or you're a previous subscriber on my channel, welcome back. In today's video, I will be doing something that is really out of my comfort zone, and you can see a few things here on the desk that may give it away. Of course, the buttons. Today we are going to work on how to use a buttonhole foot like this. You may have a machine where you have a buttonhole foot like this, and you can see that it has like a plug, a jack plug, and this particular one is for my FAF sewing machine. And I have absolutely no idea how to use this one. Maybe in the future we'll do a video on this one. But for today, it was specifically asked on how to sew a buttonhole using my Brother SE625 embroidery and sewing machine. So if you're really lucky, you'll have a machine that comes with the buttonhole foot. Also, it will come with the button placement foot, and that's what this little clear one is. Okay. Okay, so first what we'll do is we're going to go over everything you're going to need to sew a buttonhole. First of all, of course, you're going to need your fabric or the garment, whatever you're making. And I went ahead and I did a test buttonhole to just kind of familiarize myself. And that's what that is there. Okay. Then, okay, so your garment or your fabric that you're going to be sewing your buttonhole in, it can be a garment, it could be a purse, it can be a tote bag, anything that you're going to sew a button on. Okay, so grab that item. You're going to need some type of a ruler or a seam guide so you can mark on the fabric where that buttonhole is going to go. Then of course you're going to need some kind of a marking pencil or a water-soluble pen to mark where the buttonhole will be on the fabric. And a long time ago in junior high, if I remember correctly, in home economics class, we used these type of seam guide rulers, and it has a little slide portion, and that will help you mark exactly where your buttonhole needs to go, because you can slide that right to the measurements you need. So I believe I found this one at Walmart or at Hobby Lobby, and it may have even been in a kit that came with some clippers or some little snippers, a seam ripper, and then the ruler. And then I also did see that you can buy them separately, and I believe they're under $2. So there's that. Then of course you're going to need your buttonhole foot. If you are not going to be sewing your button on by hand, if you want to sew the button on by machine, which this totally scares me, you will need your button placement foot, and that is that there. Okay. And I'm really sorry if our lighting is a little bit wonky right now. We've had rain all week here in New Mexico, so my lighting's a little bit off, and I really apologize for that. Okay, so your buttonhole foot, your button placement foot, you will, depending on the type of buttonhole you're going to sew, you may need your eyelet punch. And what this will do is it will help you open the buttonhole after it's completed. So there's that. In today's case, I will not be using that. Okay, so you're going to need a seam ripper, some nippers or snippers, I like to always have a pair of tweezers at my machine. You can either use an old pair or you can use sewing ones like these. I got this at a quilt show several years ago. And that is just so that when you are threading your machine, you can put the thread through the foot if you need to, and you can just grab it from underneath. And of course, you are going to need whatever type of button you're going to sew. Some of the buttonhole foots will let you sew a button that has the shank on the back of it. I believe that's what that's called, is the shank. Or if you are just using, whoops, slippery little guy, a flat button. There are many different types of buttons, so you can have your large buttons, whoops, you can have natural buttons, you can have buttons that have 4 holes in them, buttons that have 2 holes in them, whatever type of button you're going to use, okay? And it will show you in the manual how to use your button placement foot, whether you are going to be using a 2-hole button or a 4-hole button. But today we're just going to use a 2-hole. I'm not going to press my luck into a 4-hole button. Maybe in the future we'll work on that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust the camera to the front of the machine, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have the camera set to the front of the machine. What we're going to do is you're going to first determine the type of buttonhole that you're going to need for the fabric that you're using. In your manual, it's going to tell you what type of buttonhole you're going to need, and it's going to tell you to go to your stitch selection in your manual. And it will tell you whether or not, if you have woven fabrics, stretch fabrics, medium weight fabric, heavyweight fabrics, and what type of buttonhole to use for that type of fabric. So there's keyhole buttonhole stitches, there's tapered keyhole buttonhole stitch, there is narrow buttonhole stitches, tapered round-ended buttonhole stitches, round-ended buttonhole stitch, narrow square buttonhole stitch, stretch buttonhole stitch for stretch fabrics. Then there's an heirloom buttonhole stitch. So definitely read through to find out which one is going to work best for your project. Then once you do that, you are going to, let me go back. We're going to talk about, before we get into it, we're going to talk a little bit about the parts of your buttonhole foot if you are unfamiliar with a buttonhole foot. So there is this portion right here. You can kind of see where it's kind of got these little kind of ridges in it here. And this opens up. Come on. And it's just going to ratchet kind of open. And this portion is the buttonhole or the button guide plate. So this is where you're going to place your button. Okay, right there. Then you've got a presser foot scale, which are these little, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting out of frame. These little notches here on your, I'm sorry, my stomach is growling. I have not eaten lunch yet today, so I am on a diet, so it's growling a little until I get used to not eating. Okay, sorry about that, getting off track. Okay, then it is going to have your pin, and this is where you're going to attach it to the machine. And then it has 5mm notches. So each one of these notches, I'm really sorry, it's really hard to see those. So each one between each notch is 5 millimeter. Okay. So what we're going to do is you are first going to mark your fabric, and I just kind of did some little marks there, and that is where your button placement is going to be. So you want to mark your fabric. Okay, let me adjust the light a little bit here. I don't know if this is going to work very well. Then you're going to take your button and you are going to place it into the buttonhole foot. So this is the button we're going to use today, and I was going to use a white button, but it was a little bit harder to see. So we're just going to fit that right into the buttonhole foot, like so. And then you're going to attach it to the machine. But first, if you have a button that does not fit into the machine, some buttons, like these shank buttons that has this little shank on the back of it, will have, they'll be domed. And if it's a domed button, it will not fit into your foot. So definitely look in your manual's instructions, and it will tell you that if the buttonhole does not fit, it will tell you how to adjust the buttonhole or the button guide, so you sew the buttonhole in the size that you need it. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to take your buttonhole foot and you are going to attach it to the machine. And we got that attached. And you're going to take your thread and you're going to stick it through. And this is where my little tweezers come in. I just like it so I can grab up underneath of anything if it's hard to see. Then you're going to select your stitch, where I talked about earlier that you're going to use the stitch that is correct for the type of fabric that you are using. In my case, I'm just using a quilter's cotton, excuse me, and this will be similar to maybe a shirt or like a summer dress or something like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your machine and you're going to select your buttonholes. And for me, the buttonhole that I will be using is 4-04. Okay, and then your machine will tell you your width, your length, your whatever you need to set it to. It'll tell you the buttonhole foot to attach it. And our next step will be, let me turn in the manual. Your next step will be you're going to position your fabric underneath the end of the buttonhole. Mark a line, the buttonhole marks with the, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're going to take your fabric and you're going to align it with the red marks on the sides of the buttonhole foot. Okay, so I'm lucky to have two buttonhole foots. Buttonhole presser feet. Sorry. Lack of eating. I'm talking funny. So this is the one that came with my SE625 machine, and then I also have a SQ9185 sewing and quilting machine, and this one came with that one. So you're going to take your fabric and you're going to align it with the red marks on the side of the buttonhole foot, and you can see the marks right here. Okay, and this one, I believe if you are going to be sewing a horizontal buttonhole or if you're going to be sewing a, this is for vertical and this is for horizontal. Okay, so we'll set that one aside. So I'm going to see, and it is really hard to see it. So I've got that. Okay, so I've got it aligned. I'm going to put my presser foot down. Then my next step that I'm going to do is I am going to lower my buttonhole lever, and it will be kind of like tucked up into the machine, and you're going to pull that down. And if you noticed, I'm going to pop that back in. Watch my button, my like so, and it turned green. Okay, that means I can go ahead and sew. But what you're going to do is you're going to place, it might look like, let me adjust the camera a little bit so you can understand what I'm trying to say on this portion. Hang on just a moment. Okay, so hopefully this works without the camera drifting. I had a real hard time kind of getting it adjusted to where you can see exactly what I'm talking about right here. There is on this part of the foot, so we're talking about when this is open, there is this little part right here, and if you notice it, there's like a little groove in it. Can you see that little groove right there? You do not want to put this part underneath of there, okay? So when I was first trying to sew the test buttonhole, I was trying to put it underneath of this, and it would not go. Every time I put the foot, so if the foot's up, it fits in there perfectly, okay? But when your foot is down, it would pop out. See, so if it's in there, when you put your foot down, it popped out. So let me realign my stitch. And okay, so you're not going to be putting that in that little notch. You're going to be putting it behind. Okay, so see what I did there? I'm putting it behind that. And let me see if I can get that just a little bit better. So not in it, but behind it. Okay, like so. And that is that notch right here. So you're going to put it behind it, not in the groove. Okay? So you're going to make sure that that's pulled down as far as it is, if you can go, and you're going to place that behind it. Then you're going to gently hold your thread tail, and you're going to go ahead and push start. And it's going to automatically sew your button for you. I may have had it not lined up quite straight. And once the sewing's completed, the machine will automatically sew a reinforcement stitch, and then it will stop. Okay, so there it stopped. Then you're going to press your thread cutter. Okay, and then you're going to raise your presser foot and remove your fabric. And there is your buttonhole. Okay, and you can tell that, yes, I definitely did have that not lined up correctly, and that was just because I could not get right up on top of the machine, whoops, I'm sorry, to see where to place it because of the camera. If you are using a buttonhole that has like the little eyelet at the bottom of it, depending on what buttonhole you use, you would use your eyelet punch and make a little hole. But I am going to readjust the camera and I will show you our next step. Okay, So once you have your buttonhole cut open, if you want to use your machine to attach the button to the fabric, you're going to put on your button placement foot, and that's what this one looks like right here. It is a letter M for my Brother machine, and you're going to pop that right on. And I'm hoping I'm able to get through this video. I just had a power surge, and I was filming this, I was filming this portion, and the power surge shut off the camera. So I am hoping that I'll be able to get through this part without that doing it again. It is getting really nasty outside, so I'm going to try to get this finished. Okay, so what you want to do after you attach your button placement foot, you want to make sure that your feed dogs on the back of the machine are lowered, or wherever your switch for your feed dogs are, and your teeth here on the machine are your feed dogs. Some machines cannot be lowered, so make sure you look in your manual that tells you how to properly do that. Okay, it's getting really scary out there, so I may have to pause this video. We're going to go ahead and go for it because it's really short. Okay, so what your next step is going to be is after you attach your foot, you're going to lower your feed dog, place your fabric underneath the foot where you are going to be attaching the button. And I'm just using the same piece of fabric, and I'm going to put my button, and your manual will tell you what is the proper stitch to set your button sewing stitch at. And what you're going to want to do is, once you've got your feed dogs lowered and it attached, you're going to want to take a ruler and measure the holes of the button. Okay, and mine looks like in between 4 and 5. So you're going to set your machine to the stitch width, and mine is set, I've got mine set to 4.5 millimeter, and maybe you guys could hear that thunder. I am going to try to get this completed really quickly. So I got my button underneath the foot. I'm going to put the foot down, and I do not have it threaded, so let's thread that needle. Ooh, that's scary. Okay. Okay, it's not wanting to thread the needle, so I'm going to just manually. Okay. I think it doesn't like this presser foot. Some presser feet you can use the manual needle threader. Some of them you can't. It just all depends. Okay, so I'm going to put that back there a little. Put the button back underneath. And what you want to do before you start sewing is you want to make sure that you're going to use your hand wheel, and you're going to make sure that your needle is going to go through the holes of the button. So you're going to, in my case, I'm going to turn the wheel counterclockwise, so that just barely goes in there. So let me adjust it just a little bit more. Okay, so it went through the first hole. I'm going to keep turning, and it went through the first hole again, and it moved over, and it goes through the second hole, and then popped back my needle position to the first. So I am going to hold my thread. I'm going to hit go, and it is going to stitch the button. And it did the reinforcement stitch, and that I'm going to cut and raise it, and I have my button sewn to the fabric. So I'm going to trim my thread tails, and on the front, and that is my button sewn to the front. Trim that one again, like so. And I'm going to turn it this way. And for our first button, we're going to, so it's attached to the fabric, and right through the buttonhole. And that is how you sew a buttonhole and use the machine with the button placement foot to sew a button onto a garment, a bag, or whatever you are going to be sewing. Okay, if you all have any questions, please comment down below. Dawn, I hope this answered your question on how the Brother SE625 embroidery and sewing machine sews buttonholes and buttons. And please excuse any of the errors or any of the kind of getting off track. I was really actually kind of very nervous to do this video, and I hope everything is good. We will see you all in the next video, where we will be continuing on with the Missouri Star Quilt Company Calico Cats pattern. So this video is going to be an extra in between those videos. If you all have any suggestions on future videos that you would like me to do for either the Brother machine or the FAF machine, please comment down below, and we will see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.